Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidda-didda-doo.
Minor Wisdom.
I am sitting here in what looks like a war zone of a house as we get packed up, hoping to move soon, moving things to storage so that we can make our trek up to the Woodlands for a job that I am more than excited about at the John Cooper School in the Woodlands, the private school up in the Woodlands. Anyway, enough about that, but just in case some things sound a little different between now and whenever I move and get set up and get my man cave all figured out, might sound a little different, some of these podcasts. I'm getting towards the end of the spring break interviews. So this week I've got my current superintendent, Dr. Charles Dupre, on, and he is leaving after this year. He's, I believe June 10th is when he's officially done with Fort Bend ISD, and his plans are still, not known and what he's going to do. But Dr. Dupre and I, Charles, as I call him, because we are on that level. Thank you, Charles. But he became my friend. He's not just a superintendent to me. He's actually become more of a friend than a superintendent, which is not obviously how it started. But it's awesome. I mean, it's, for me personally as a man and as kind of an educator that is still learning the ropes, to have somebody that has been through it, done it, been there, done that kind of thing, and even lived through, I say that like it's a horrible thing, but even as a private sector individual, as an accountant, it's great to just get feedback from him. And every time we meet up, he asks me how I've grown as a man. And I'm not going to lie, when he first started asking, it was a lot harder to think about. But now I know when I am going to see him, I know he's going to ask, and I prepare. And I think that's very good. Have somebody that has had so much influence on so many people, to be able to just have private conversations with somebody like that. I value that more than he'll ever know. I know he's probably listening, but I value that more than anything. And I think we get into the story of how Dr. Dupre and I kind of became friends, and that's not really the important part of the interview and the discussion. It's the important part of the discussion is that this is a superintendent of one of the largest districts in the state of Texas. Not just with the number of students and staff, but also just geographically speaking, it's just a massive, massive district. If you go from Bush High School to Ridge Point High School, or even like Willow Ridge, I mean, it's an hour plus to get from one end to the other. So it's just a large, large district. And for him to he appreciates everything, but he appreciates fine arts and theater especially, and is very supportive. I mean, it's hard to not be supportive when you have schools like Bush High School, and before Bush High School you had Travis High School. Now we've got Kempner High School, all of which are going to state. You've got Ridge Point that is constantly a regional, and I don't mean to put Ridge Point down, but it's like they're kind of the bridesmaid theater company, because they're always right there with phenomenal shows, and it hasn't broken through yet, but I know it will in the next few years, especially with Brooke. But it's been awesome to see that support, and the way we met was because of theater. The way we became friends was because of theater, and that's just kind of how we've continued to bond. But now we've grown to know each other, and it's just amazing, and I love that journey that I'm on with becoming his friend. So I hope you really enjoy this interview with the superintendent of one of the largest districts in the state of Texas, and his feedback and perspective of theater and beyond. We talk about a lot more than just that. So it's a really fun conversation. With Charles, I can sit and talk to him as long as he's available, and I'm glad to do that all the time. So I hope you enjoy this. Again, it might be, I don't know if there's any dated material in here, but keep in mind, we recorded this back, I think it was actually on St. Patrick's Day. I could be wrong, but it was around that time. So, if there's anything that's dated, I mean, it's almost a 2 month old interview, then forgive us. But that said, lots of things happening. I know last week I talked about Texas thespians having professional development. That's still a thing. Just because you missed out on the early bird doesn't mean you should miss out completely. But if you go to the texasthespians.org website, you can see all the names of the amazing professional development workshop leaders that are going to be there. Super excited about that. Summerfest coming up with TXETA. I am training to be an adjudicator next week, so that's kind of fun. I hope that that's something that I get to do. Now, it's no secret. I am not going to tell your children or the director how to be better at directing or acting necessarily. I have my opinions and such, but my background is design and tech. So if you're thinking about next year, clinicking, all that kind of stuff, yeah, I'm hustling right now. If you're thinking about some clinics that you just kind of need that extra set of eyes for tech, I'd be happy to tell you some things about acting and some perspective and things like that. That's what I was trained as an actor, but I kind of grew into the design world. But I'm happy to be a clinician. I'd love to be an adjudicator. But I'm just happy to get the training under my belt. And I finally bit the bullet and became a lifetime member of T-Tau. T-Tau. It's my favorite of all the acronyms because of just how forceful you can say that acronym. Anyway, enough about me. I did open your Good Man Charlie Brown this past week, and it is closing as we speak. It's closing today. I opened up Moana as well, and I wrote some cues for somebody doing a small version of Seussical, 3 shows in 1 week. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Blake Minor. Friend me on Facebook, like the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Enjoy your week.
So I was born in Morocco, Casablanca, on Thanksgiving Day, 1961. On that day, my parents adopted me, took me straight home from that hospital to the Air Force base in Casablanca where they were living. My dad was in the Air Force, and that's where they were stationed. We lived there about 3 years. Then we moved to the United States, back stateside, and we were in Maine for a few years, and then we were in San Antonio. While we were in San Antonio, my mother passed away. She had some significant health problems, which is why she couldn't bear children and why they ended up adopting me. But she passed away a few days before my 6th birthday. And then 2 years after that, my dad had remarried and was an alcoholic, and I was in an abusive home, and he decided he didn't want to be a dad anymore. It was made even more uncomfortable because they were a white family. I was a brown child. And so we went to court, and he gave up custody, and I went to live in Fairhaven Children's Home. It was a faith-based home in central Missouri. Lived there from age 7 until I was 18 years old. It wasn't an easy time because I was alone. I lived in a house with 10 children and 2 house parents, and I was well taken care of, good food, good safe environment. But psychologically, emotionally, it was a challenging season because I was the only brown kid in the entire school system as well. And so I was always different. I didn't always know I was different, but I had good teachers who taught me, who made sure that I succeeded. Ended up graduating near the top of my class from that little school. And because of that and because of being an orphan, I was able to go at no charge to college at a private Christian school. And got a degree. I was going to get a degree in education. That was always my first love, was teaching and investing in others. I was always a camp counselor and retreat, those kind of things. But my junior year, I realized that my friends graduating with accounting degrees were making $25,000 a year. My friends graduating with education degrees were making about $11,000. So I changed my degree to accounting because I had no backstop of a family to rely on. So I ended up getting that accounting degree, graduated in 4 years, came to Houston to work at Arthur Anderson, ended up working a few years there, and then I got in the oil and gas industry, a total of 11 years as an accountant in downtown Houston. And in 1995, I had the opportunity, because of a connection to the superintendent in Fort Bend at the time, to come to Fort Bend ISD. My boss knew him personally. He needed 4 CPAs, and I happened to be one. And so, on my boss's recommendation, he hired me to come and be internal auditor in Fort Bend. And I did it. I was internal auditor for a couple of years. I was budget officer for a few years, and then I was promoted to be associate superintendent. Got my master's degree while I was in that office as associate superintendent. Superintendent told me, she says, you'd be a good superintendent if you ever wanted to do it. And I said, never been a teacher, never been a principal. I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
But she says, there's a waiver, and if you want to do it, get the master's. So I got the master's, and then a few years after that, I left to go to Pflugerville ISD to be deputy. It was a good career promotion opportunity in a little smaller district, had broader authority over other than just the money stuff. I was literally there 4 months, and the superintendent left. And the board said, we want you to be interim superintendent. I was interim for 6 months. They said, we're not even going to post this. We're going to post it. We're not going to recruit or do a big search. We're just going to post it, and you can have the job. And I ended up serving in Pflugerville for 7 years. And then when Fort Bend had an opening in 2012, the recruiter called me 3 times, to be exact, to inquire. And at first I was like, oh, no, I'm good. I've had a good career. You can't really go back home.
Right.
But inside of me, there was always that little desire to go back home, to lead Fort Bend ISD, because this is where I started.
Right.
I invested 11 years of my career and my life here in this community. And so I ended up, after 3 interviews, I got the job. And I came back to Fort Bend as superintendent in 2013. And 8 years later, here we go, and I'm looking at retirement.
Yeah. So I had a curious question, since I've known you for a while now, but do you know how big the district had grown, how much the district had grown from when you left to when you came back?
It had not grown a lot. It had grown some, and they opened Ridge Point High School when I was gone. We built Travis High School when I was here, and it opened the year I left. And then they built 1 high school. So the district, even today, is growing.
Right.
But it probably grew from, I say when I left, there were probably maybe 60 to 65,000 students. And when I came back, it was in the mid to high 70s.
Okay.
So they'd opened several schools.
Right. And so, backstory on how you and I became friends, and if you don't mind me telling, because it's not a bad story, it's just a funny story, but the way I remember it, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I took some students to New York. Before that, you had word that I was taking students to New York and said, I'll be there at the same time, let's meet up, and I'll see your kids and all that kind of stuff. And then, for one reason or another, that it didn't end up working out, but you felt you owed me for, quote, standing me up. But you didn't, when we had a full plate of things to do, it wasn't like the kids were standing out in the cold just, where's our superintendent? But it wasn't like that. But so we went and grabbed, I think, lunch or something, and there you go. So
well, that's funny.
I'm grateful you felt you owed me. So
it's funny to me that you would see that as the initial connection. I that's probably right, because that's when we kind of formed a friendship, was over lunch.
But I hadn't met you, but
because I just remember when I got back and doing convocations and things, you were always very involved in that. And I kept hearing about Blake, and why is he the one doing all this?
Yeah. But then what really kind of blossomed or blew up the idea that you're kind of a theater nerd kind of thing was that convocation. I think that's when it really clicked with me. Like, oh, this guy really, like, theater's a thing with him. It's not just a way to entertain. It's something you actually really enjoy. So with that convocation, you sang Hairspray, correct?
Yes.
So,
you can't stop the beat.
Yeah, can't stop the beat. So, and that was, and you wanted a big production, and there was like a lot of, and what's funny about that, and again, I'll be a little candid, is some people didn't know why you wanted a big production, but I'm sitting there going, because it's a show. It's that he understands the theatrics. It's not just another day, and it's supposed to be big for all the employees and the teachers, and they shouldn't walk in and be boring. So
that's right.
Nobody wants that.
Might I add that on that production, the reason I performed is because I can sing satisfactorily,
Right,
if you will.
right. It's not embarrassing.
But the reason I did it is because I wanted people to see I was willing to put myself out there and
Sure.
take a risk the way I asked them to take a risk and to put themselves out there every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and
it wasn't about being the star of the show.
No.
It was about being, saying, man, he really put himself out
Yeah.
there. I can do that too.
Honestly, I don't even think you were the star of the show. I mean,
No.
I think because there were so many students, especially those elementary kids.
Oh,
that
yeah.
were, so
And all the teachers were up there
yeah.
singing with us.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was more fun. It was fun to see a superintendent up there, but it was more fun for all these colleagues to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, so-and-so is going to do this, or
That's right.
wow, they really can sing. Because I didn't know at that time, name dropping Jennifer Marrero, she's a choir teacher, you assume they can sing.
That's right.
But she, sang.
Yeah. They all did.
So, that was fun. That was really fun to watch, but I remember that well. But so you are a lover of theater. You go to New York, and see shows, and sometimes will find what time to go do that, even if you're in New York for another reason. So, why, what made you fall in love with it?
I'm going to have to say it's just part of how I'm wired.
Sure.
I think, given my background, when I was in the children's home, I read voraciously.
Okay.
All the time. I was in a book all the time, and I think it was a way to escape.
Yeah.
I think theater is part of that as well. I remember distinctly going to see, when I was probably 4th or 5th grade, the high school did an old show Down in the Valley. And it, and it was the guy, there's a murder mystery, and the guy ends up in jail, and he, happy ending kind of story. But I just remember being enthralled.
Yeah.
And then I got to go see, when I was in middle school, they did The Great American Dame,
Okay.
which is called a play out. It's not really a play because it's a lot of vignettes, a lot of scenes about women through history. And it was just, I was enthralled by the cast, the acting, and I could still quote scenes from that. I probably have a copy of the script, because I loved that show. And then so when I got to middle school, I finally was able to try out.
Yeah.
But really, I think I always fell in love, and I even enjoyed reading. I still enjoy reading plays.
Right.
Just something about the literature, the content of them, but then to see them come to life. I think, again, if I go back to the why, I think it's something I always escaped to. The fantasy of it all,
Yeah.
the alternative lives you could live, all the people you could be, that just always connected with me.
Is there a specific style that you enjoy reading more than others?
I am a classic
Okay.
guy. Arthur Miller.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Okay.
Give me a good Arthur Miller play on stage or in the playbook. And
Do you ever envision it? I know that's a dumb question. I know you envision it, but do you ever envision yourself in a role?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Do you,
many different roles.
Why don't you direct? Why don't you try your hand at that? Why don't you?
I got to direct a show when I was
Okay.
in high school.
Okay.
So one of the first shows that I got to see was 6 Characters in Search of an Author.
Okay.
Pirandello.
Yeah.
It was at
remember
Southwest Missouri State
Yeah.
University, now Missouri State University in Springfield. And I'm going to tell you, I still, just sitting here,
Yeah.
I can see it. And so, I'll reveal a little bit more about
Yeah.
myself. So another reason I like theater, if I'm going to be honest, is because in my small town, it was sophisticated.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And it gave me a vocabulary, it gave me something to talk about, something to be interested in, that set me apart from the other kids in my school. And so when we went to see that show, 6 Characters in Search of an Author, I mean, they had one of those in the floor, the escape hatch in the floor where characters would appear, and I don't know the technical term for that.
I
but,
mean, yeah. Keep going. I'm
But
blanking.
characters would magically appear and disappear through the floor, and
Yeah.
and just the whole plot of the show.
Trapdoor.
The
Yeah,
trapdoor.
There you go.
But they would just come and go through the trapdoor, and the whole plot of the show, it just was it's so engaging. So my senior year, as part of my Theater 4 class, I was one of very, very few kids who took 4 years of theater in my school. I directed that show, and all my classmates were like, "He has lost his mind."
Did you have a trapdoor?
No, we didn't have a trap door, but I was desperately trying to figure out how to make them come and go.
That's funny. So, but you've grown. Well, do you read musicals? Because I know like musicals have become kind of your thing. I know you listen to music.
Well, actually, I go back and forth.
Okay.
I used to love big musicals,
Right.
and I still do the right musical.
Right.
But part of my connection to the musical is the college I went to, Harding University, had a big show that was put on by the fraternities and sororities
Okay.
called Spring Sing. And so I went to that starting in 7th grade. So I loved that. It had hosts and hostesses.
Oh, so
singing
you started
solos.
early going there.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
well, yeah. When we would go
Yeah.
every year, and I wanted to go to Harding so I could perform
Right.
in Spring Sing. I did not. My first musical production that I was actually a part of was my senior year. We did not do musicals in my high school, but in Springfield they had Springfield Little Theater, and I went on a whim my senior year and tried out for Punch and Judy,
Okay.
the comical tragedy or the tragical comedy
Yeah.
of Punch and Judy. It was a light musical. It was going to be a children's show that we were going to perform in the theater and then take on the road. Now you got to keep in mind this was in 1979, which is not that long ago, but it's a lifetime ago.
Right.
And I tried out. I'm African American, right? They called me into a room, and they said, we really want to consider you for Punch, but we want to know you're comfortable with Judy being a white actress.
Mhm.
Well, they had the same conversation with her.
Yeah.
And we both said, of course.
Yeah.
She happened to be a freshman or sophomore at Southwest Missouri State. I was a senior in high school. Caroline Van Staveren, I still remember her name. And we both agreed, and we did that show.
Yeah.
We did it on stage at the Little Theater. I learned so much in that production. I learned a lot about some things that I shouldn't know about that go on behind the scenes
Sure.
of a show, and
Sure.
because there were some adult actors that
Yeah.
that were experienced, that were doing some things backstage
Yeah.
they should not have been doing,
Right.
that I shouldn't be witnessing.
Right.
And so I learned so
Like
much.
vocal warm-ups, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's what
Oh yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. That's exactly it. But I missed school a few days. We
Yeah.
got to perform on TV on the local news. We went to some middle schools and
Did
performed
that
for
elevate
children.
your status at school? Did anybody care?
All my theater friends were like,
okay.
"Oh my gosh, look
Yeah.
at what he's doing," because no one in our peer group had done that before.
Right.
I was real big in speech and debate, and that's really a lot of where my love for the classic theater came to be is
Right.
duet acting scenes.
Yeah.
I'll never forget a young woman named Lisa Whitson. She wasn't from my school, but she did some scenes from Death of a Salesman. And I hated her because she always beat me,
Yeah.
but I loved her because she just brought it to life
Right.
and in a dramatic interpretation, at a speech tournament. So you can kind of see all these elements came to bear of me, the escapism of actually being in theater.
Right.
And, I got to be in some shows. I got to be in one show, Red Carnations, the little one-act show that I got in. It was high school, but I got to try out when I was in 8th grade.
Okay.
And I got the part. So it was me and two young women who were high school students.
So yeah, you have a little bit of a resume.
But my first real musical,
Yeah.
though, was at Harding when I was in college. In my junior year, they did Oklahoma for the homecoming musical. And I had never been in a musical to that scale before.
Right.
Punch and Judy, we maybe had 6 in the cast, and it was a light dancing
Right.
show. But this was a full-blown musical. And and so I went and I tried out. I probably shouldn't tell this part, but the night before tryouts, I had gone to the Trestles, which was this big train trestle
Okay.
outside of town. And we would go out there, friends would go out there and sit on top of the trestle when the 11 p.m. train was coming through and smoke cigars.
Okay.
And I did that.
Yeah.
And the train comes through and you're sitting up there with all the rattling
Yeah.
and all, and it's a rush. Well, I did that for the first time the day before I tried out for Oklahoma in a singing part.
Yeah.
From the cigars, my
Yeah.
entire head was inflamed.
Yeah.
All the membranes. I had never smoked. But I still got cast. And I remember going, and I looked at the cast list, and it said, Allie Hackham. some country guy. What is that?
Yeah.
Not having a clue, it was really one of the top love interests in the show with
Right.
Ado Annie.
Right.
So I got cast in my first major musical in one of the secondary leads, and just had a blast. It was a great experience. Of course, there's also some tragedy that was associated with that show.
Okay.
One of my roommates died.
Oh.
He was actually in the show, and he died. They've never publicly said that he took his own life,
Right.
but it's believed that he took his own life.
Right.
But he died on Monday before we opened on Friday.
Wow.
And so because of the way he died by hanging,
Right.
we had to cut out some of Judd Fry's
Right.
song,
Yeah.
just for the sensitivity of the cast and the
Right.
audience and what was going on. So that show has forever been associated with that loss and that very difficult
Wow.
week that we all endured.
Yeah. It's that old show must go on, but to what extent?
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
very hard. Lots of emotion, breakdowns.
Yeah.
It was just a very very challenging
That's
week.
tough.
But it was. But it's still it was just, I love Oklahoma. I can
Right.
still sing the entire soundtrack,
Right.
and it was a great experience.
What other musicals are up there on your? I know Chorus Line.
Chorus Line was the first touring. No, Cabaret
Okay.
was the first touring professional show I saw in Springfield
Okay.
with my theater teacher.
Where
took
is
us.
what is the space in Springfield? Like, what's the?
It
where
was
do
at
they
the
go?
Hammond Center.
Okay.
So it was a stage set up on the floor of like Hammond Center, which is like a big
Okay.
basketball arena.
So you're looking down at the show. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Now, 6 Characters in Search of an Author, that was in the theater setting.
Okay.
But this was more of a touring to get more people in
Right.
in the Hammond Center.
Yeah.
The way it was constructed at the time, it may have been remodeled by now.
Okay. So, but
But
you saw
Cabaret-
Chorus Line there
I saw
as
Cabaret
well?
there, and then
Okay.
in college I saw Chorus Line
Okay.
in Little Rock
Okay.
in a theater, and then I also saw Annie shortly. So all those shows are shows that I still enjoy. I think if I had to name a favorite, it'll be hard because the updated versions of Cabaret were transformational for me
Right.
because I didn't really understand the show
Right.
as a young person. Now to really know what it's about
Yeah.
it's just been very transformational how I see things, and I love the sentiment in the show. But I also love Billy Elliot.
Right.
I've had the opportunity to see it a couple of times on Broadway and in the West End in London.
Okay.
And I think Billy Elliot resonates with me because his mom has died. It's
Yeah.
about a young boy who was without a mother.
Right.
And there's some songs in there that he sings with his mom that just
Yeah.
always move me and reduce me.
Yeah. I think you mentioned Cabaret, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but so when we went and saw Ragtime, you had never seen it before, and so it was news to you, and there were certain portions that were probably going to hit you different than they hit me, and that's how I felt the first time I saw Cabaret, because I didn't know much about Cabaret the first time I saw it. And this was I was in high school on Broadway on a New York trip, and the flags come flying in, and I was like, oh, this went from 0 to 60 real fast. and so as a Jewish teenage boy sitting there having fun at this like first act of Cabaret, and then all of a sudden those flags come flying in. I remember that was the only time in my musical theater life that I felt the bricks. Like I felt like I had just smacked into a bunch of bricks.
Yeah.
Seeing that was super impactful. So
many scenes in that show were just like that.
yeah,
though.
yeah.
They're
But
just
but they
stunning.
wait. It's not they lure you in with the first 45 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is really fun and kind of lighthearted, and the MC is really fun, and then all of a sudden it just takes a complete turn.
Yes.
But yes, it's a beautiful show, and I've been fortunate enough to know one of the people that was with Alan Cumming. One of the stars of that show is my best friend's brother, which sounds like a sitcom. But anyway, yeah. so I was able
What's
to see
his
that.
name?
Aaron Crone. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you, but I actually have our neighbor's son was in it.
Oh,
Young man named Michael O'Donnell.
okay.
And the funny thing is, in the Alan Cummings version, and he's actually on this original Broadway soundtrack. So I happened to mention something to them about, oh, I'm going to New York for the first time,
Yeah.
because I didn't. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's put a pin there. But I happened to mention to our neighbors, who were an older couple that gave our boys piano lessons.
Right.
I mentioned to her, I happen to be going to New York. She goes, oh, well, our son, he's in cabaret. I said, oh, what's his role? Oh, he's like in the orchestra or something, blah, blah, blah. Well, he was, but he was also an understudy
Okay.
for the.
It's like a swing.
But he also had one of the featured roles in the the one with 3.
Right. Yeah.
You know
yeah.
the song I'm
I know what
talking
you're
about.
Yeah.
So he had some featured performance
So you
roles.
stage time. Yeah.
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 Lots of it.
Yeah.
And so I just happened to, I wrote a little note. And so first of all, when I got home, I'm told his mom, I'm like, he's not just like in the orchestra. He's like here. It was like amazing. And I had never met him before, because he's older.
Yeah.
But I wrote a little note that I had sent down to him, and he sent a note back, and he took me backstage and down into the dressing rooms. Never met me. I just said, hey, my mom's a neighbor, a good woman, love her, blah, blah, blah. And
That's cool.
it was my first time to get to go backstage and see all that. It was a great experience.
Yeah, not nearly the type of producers that we experience, but that's always fun. And also seeing the Broadway going backstage can sometimes ruin it for you, but also sometimes be quite cool as far as how they just have to hide everything and winch it up and
in
all
such
that.
small space.
Yeah. Those Broadway theaters are built up, not out. So. What was it about, you said put a pin in the New York?
Well, see, I did not. I've loved theater my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, my wife and I we've regularly gone to theater where we've lived in Houston for most of our life, but also in Austin we'd go to a lot of touring productions and university shows. Finally got to go to Broadway for the first time in the fall of 2000.
Yeah.
And I always think about that for a number of reasons. But Kiss Me Kate was the first show I got to see on Broadway.
Okay.
We were there 3 days, and I still to this day kick myself because I did not think to go see more shows.
Yeah.
I saw one show that we had tickets to with the group we were with, and I'm like, I have this great opportunity. So the next time we went, I saw a show every day.
Right.
And now my pattern is if I'm in New York, I see at least one show a day. And sometimes 2 if I can get a matinee and an evening, because I'm like, you don't get to go often.
Right.
And so, but I didn't get to go for the first time until 2000. And the highlight of that trip, which it's another milestone event in our nation, I was dancing on top of the World Trade Center at a bar called Windows on the World.
Yeah.
In, I guess it would have been October, November 2000, less than a full year before the whole thing came down. And I always think about we were there. I remember that elevator ride to the top, and just so I always have that image of how in the heck did that whole thing come down the way it did.
Yeah, I've got some friends that were impacted by that, but not to make light of any of that, but I can now, and I didn't know this, that 2000 was the first time you'd been, so I can say that I saw a Broadway show before you. That's good.
That's okay. It took me a while, but I go back regularly now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're there. You're a more frequent flyer there. But
sometimes I just tell my wife I'm going. She's like, "You're not taking me," and I'm like, "No, I'm the theater nerd in this family." But I found a couple little places where you can get a little teeny bedroom, a little hotel with a twin bed, which is the goofiest thing, and I can literally touch both walls when I extend my arms. It's cheap, and it's decent in a decent, safe place in Times Square area. But I'm like, I love to go. Sometimes if there's a show, like I got to see Philip Seymour Hoffman before he died in Death of a Salesman with Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
And of course, the real star of the show was, I can't think of the actress's name, but the woman who played
the mom.
The mom.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all phenomenal. The whole show was amazing. But and I got to see. I could go on and on.
Well, so what show surprised you? What show did that you sat down in the theater and just thought, not that you walked in with negative ideas, but that you didn't have really any preconceived ideas about it, and you walked out thinking, wow.
So the first show that surprised me that way was not on Broadway.
Okay.
It was when they launched Jekyll and Hyde.
Okay. Yeah, you like Jekyll and Hyde, don't you?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I like the original. No,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
where my snobbery
Not
comes
the
through.
Hasselhoff Jekyll and Hyde.
No, because and I probably lectured you on this before.
Yeah.
When Alley Theater and Theater Under the Stars first did it,
Yeah.
the original show before it went to Broadway was amazing.
Yeah.
But on the way to Broadway,
Somewhere.
they created composite characters. They eliminated people. They changed the motivation of Jekyll. The whole thing. They just destroyed the show. But I've got a soundtrack version of that original, the complete works,
Yeah.
that I still love. It was just a magical, magical show and totally surprised me.
Okay.
Billy Elliot was kind of that same way for
Yeah.
me, and I had no idea I would love it the way I did.
But you knew the story.
You know, I kind of knew the
Yeah.
story a little bit,
Yeah.
but not
Okay.
completely.
That's interesting. Yeah, I knew that you loved Jekyll and Hyde, and I knew that you didn't like the change. But as far as being surprised, I guess,
Yeah.
is your copy on CD of the music, or do you have it like
Of Jekyll and Hyde,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
CD.
Okay.
Yeah, I've moved it to my iPod.
Okay,
It's
okay,
on my
good.
old iPod Classic.
Because those are getting obsolete.
I know.
So I wanna switch.
I've got Dreamgirls in that same form, by the way.
on CD.
Yes,
Okay.
the complete works of Dreamgirls.
But Dreamgirls, is that not Beyonce Dreamgirls, or is that
No,
okay,
no.
is
So
way back when.
this is a very special CD.
Okay,
It was a fundraiser they did. I think it was for Broadway Cares or something, but it was a concert version.
Mm.
The entire show with some dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, bridging.
Just to leave, yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was amazing. I still listen to that on a regular basis.
Who do you know who the actresses are?
Audra McDonald was in it. I cannot know. I mean, there's several names that if you said them, I would recognize
Yeah.
them because they're more recognizable even more now than
Right.
they were.
Okay.
But
All
yeah, it was. But I still that's another show that is just I have not got to see on Broadway.
Have
yet.
you heard the Audra McDonald Ragtime?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I'm sure it's amazing.
Yeah. That's my Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, like that album. Excuse me. Is every time I hear it, that's goosebumps. Anyway, so switching gears a little bit to the educational side of things. I feel like I'm hosting a show that nobody's watching.
Hopefully they're listening.
Yeah, they're listening, but yeah, it's two walls on either side of us. You're very supportive of educational theater and education, whatever way you want to say it. Going to shows when you can, and even sometimes like you've come to some of the first or second act of a show just because you had that little chunk of an hour, and so you just drove by and did it. And I remember you doing that, and you held Ava. Did you hold Ava or Ellen?
One of them.
Yeah, I just remember it being like, I'm busy here. Here's my child. What is, right now there's a lot of hubbub in Austin about fine arts and the credit of fine arts and making it mandatory or not mandatory. And we don't have to get into the politics of that, but knowing that it's currently sensitive, why is it important? Because I know it's important because you grew up with it. Why is it important to have theater, fine arts and specifically theater in our education system, and making it kind of quote unquote mandatory?
Well, I'll tell you, I know you're trying to avoid the politics of
Yeah.
this, but it's an embarrassment that we're even having this conversation
Yeah.
about eliminating the fine arts to that degree in
Yeah.
our state. CTE is amazing, and I equally support CTE.
Right.
And there is plenty of room for both programs to thrive and serve the needs of our children
Right.
in our schools. To me, theater is it's critical in many ways. When I think of theater, I think of every person. Probably the most classic way I've looked at it goes back to the first time I attempted my master's in education. I'll never forget hearing how putting on a theater production, really it creates teamwork, it creates critical thinking, it creates all of the skills
Right.
we're looking to develop in our young people because it creates community, right? I mean, yeah, you have the talent on stage, that's who you see,
Right.
but everybody who's doing the costumes and the set design, and not just designing it but constructing it, the sound, the lighting, every aspect of all of that, that is a collaborative effort that brings this beautiful piece of art to life. And we cannot forget the value that that brings to the students to be able to participate in that. The other thing that theater does for many of our students is it's their family away from home. You know, and every child needs a community to be a part of.
Or sometimes their family. I mean,
That's it. Sometimes, oh no, for me, my friends from theater and speech and debate, all of us, we were a core group of friends. Here, I lived in a children's home, but my friend Julie Cates, she picked me up and took me back and forth to practice. All of my, we became close friends our freshman year. We were up the down staircase together. She was 2 years ahead of me, and she had the leading role. I was just Edward Williams Esquire, a goofy kid in her class. But she made sure I got to practice on time. She drove by and picked me up from my house and took me home, and it was just, it always felt safe. Dan Smith, Tammy, Donna. I mean, I could go down the list of all the names of all my theater friends and buddies that we did life together. And so it does. It's your community, and it's funny because you fight. You fight because you wanted that part, and then they got that part, but in the end, you're all on the same team. You're all working together.
So then, what is it that the people that don't want to see fine arts or theater as a mandatory credit, what is it that they're missing? Why is it that they are thinking that it's okay to eliminate this necessity?
I think that they're operating from the assumption that students who want to do it will do it, and that what they're trying to accomplish with CTE, with those pathways, is better for the state of business in our state. And that's common. So many decisions that come from our state leaders are about driving the business climate, which is very important. But any of the best cities to live and work in our nation have got a vibrant, thriving theater community as well. And we can't undersell the piece, the investment. Number one, the kids are learning skills in theater that are going to help them succeed. I mean, there's a lot of our theater kids, this, that they don't go into theater professionally. They don't study it in college, but they've learned things that help them succeed in life, whatever it is they choose to do.
They come back, whatever it be, a year, 5, 10 years later, and say, I didn't realize that when we did X, Y, and Z that it was going to kind of help me figure this stuff out. I tell my students all the time, when you own a house and you have to change even just the wall plate on your socket, are you going to know how to do that? Maybe you'll know how to do laundry, and I'm not going to teach you how to do that in theater, which is also still something you can learn.
That's right.
But there are certain little things, that especially, there's so many things that, and my wife will probably tell you, I probably didn't learn it as well as I probably should have, that I will attempt because I have the confidence from theater, like plumbing, anyway, which I don't recommend anybody.
Well, you think about it realistically too. I mean, the kids you work with in set design, they're using their mathematics skills. They're all, theater kids. They expand their I think of so many vocabulary words that I know today because they came from a play. I've said them in a play.
So is there something that you think theater educators or fine arts educators can do to make it so that it's cemented that we have to keep this around, we have to make sure that, and not just the state of Texas, because I think it's affected in a few other states, that we make sure we're seen, we're heard, we're felt important, etc.?
I think it's like anything else. Elected officials respond to the communities they serve. So I think what you have to do is you've got to get all the students. You got to get a network of all the students you've taught who feel like they've benefited from your programming, and they need to call, email, write letters to their folks at the legislature to let them know this is important. I may be a physician today, but theater was sure important to me, or I may be working in this job today, but theater was an important thing to me.
All right. Well, I mean,
advocacy is huge. I mean, you can go and tell they need to hear from you too as a teacher. because they listen to teachers. You need to tell your story, and you need to get others to tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Voters.
I don't remember the bill. I know that Jim has sent out lots of information on that. I forget the like House Bill 34 or something like that, but I don't remember the number. But there's been a lot of recently within the last month, even with Texas Thespians, we've been publicizing, hey, you got to get in front of this. And I know the president of TXETA, Perry Crafton, who's at Austin Community College, was in front of legislation, I think this week or maybe last 2 weeks ago. But anyway, yeah, it's one of those. I think there are a lot of people that feel, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I know that I was in this boat probably 10, 15 years ago that be like, somebody else will take care of it. And that ends up not being the case. You have to be one of these people that kind of speaks up. The idea of kind of throwing content out there now that is so public, right? And everything that, especially the digital stuff. Now we just share a link and we watch a show. The lack of, I guess, protection, if you will, of the students and the program is just out there, right? So now my program is not just for the community; it's for it's hyperbole, but it's for the world.
Yeah.
To speak on that, and is there a way that directors need to kind of be careful with the content and putting your students out there and making sure that everyone is safe and still, well, I guess safe. I don't want to keep harping on that, but yeah.
I think that it's incumbent upon directors, especially of those who work with high school students, to protect the students and to teach them and to value them for the diversity they represent. I see a lot of shows in our high schools. I see our one acts. There are some heavy and intense content in those shows, from language to themes, sexuality, racial issues, real issues that are not surprising to the kids. But often they're presented in a way where I'm thinking in the back of my head, I pray that director has really intentionally processed this show and what it means for these children, so that they're not carrying the burden of the weight of the show, that they're learning from it and growing as an individual through the experience. Diversity is also important, and I'm not speaking in the way we often think of diversity. I often, over my career as superintendent, I've gotten emails from parents saying, my daughter earned this very wonderful leading part, and it's got some swear words, and we don't swear in our house, and I don't want her doing that. Right. And the director says she has to do the lines as written. Well, that's a debate we don't need to be having.
Right.
You have to respect that child and their family values, and work with them in that way. So I think just, in everything we do as adults in a school system, we've got to acknowledge we are developing, we're shaping these young people, and that we have to be very sensitive to that, to their needs, to the fact that they may not even be telling us what they're feeling. I had an experience when I was in high school. Miss Fawcett, again, she pulled out a cutting from The Great White Hope, which is about a black boxer, and his white mistress. Well, she tried to get me to do that with my friend Julie Cates as a duet scene. I couldn't do it. I was a brown kid in rural Missouri who didn't even know I was black, had no black people in my life, and she was trying to get me to do the dialect and trying to realize my full blackness, and I'm like, I don't even have a construct of what this means.
Right.
It resulted in me being an emotional 15-year-old running out of the room in tears, slamming the door. I can't do it, which was overwrought emotion and more theater, right? And we processed through it later. She was trying to help me grow, and she helped me in many ways. I can look back on that now and see what she was trying to do, and she's still on my list of top 3 teachers I've ever had because of her investment in me, because she saw me for who I was. But my point is, I think every director, everybody who works with young people has to protect them, grow them, develop them, and help them maybe be able to articulate what they're feeling and thinking as they deal with some of the rich, deep content of the shows they're producing.
So you spoke on kind of taking care of and you are very big and passionate on wellness and making sure teachers are, you know, when it's spring break, it's spring break. You know,
That's right.
shut down and don't worry about getting the other, you know, the work stuff. Go enjoy your family. Go to church. Go do what you need to do. And you've said this before about you can't. What is it? What is it about the empty glass? You can't.
You can't pour anything from an empty cup.
You can't pour anything from an empty glass or an empty cup. So you're real big on making sure that cup is filled. Why is it that, or not why? How do you speak to a theater educator? Because as we sit here now, you know, I came from my school today and it's spring break. That's not a complaint. It's just something that I needed to do because of other factors. But how do you recommend, encourage, motivate a teacher to simply just say, hey, relax. You can't give students anything if you've got nothing to give.
I would say it to a theater teacher the way I say with every other teacher and every leader and every employee in our district. You can only do so much. We all have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
We can burn and burn and burn through the day, and we can go long hours, and we can wear ourselves out. But to what end?
Yeah.
You know, you're useless to your family, which is really your priority.
Yeah.
You're useless to your students if you allow yourself to degenerate and be edgy and hangry and mean
Right.
because you're tired and worn out.
Yeah.
You know, and the way to handle that is you just have to plan your schedules, plan your rehearsal schedules, plan your production schedules. And things happen, right? I mean, accidents happen. We have weather days. We got to miss rehearsal. We got to catch up before because the date of the production is probably not changing.
Right.
So, but we have to live our lives on a day-to-day basis, tending to our needs in such a way that when crisis occurs, we can deal with it. And it's because you're always going to have those extraordinary days.
Right.
You know, I tell a lot of people I work with on a daily basis, you shouldn't be here at 5 and 6 and 7 o'clock at night,
Right.
day after day after day. There's going to be days I need to ask you to do that,
Right.
but I'm not going to ask you to do that 5 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month.
Right.
And so, but some people, I've said with me, I get hardwired to standing at my desk. I have a stand-up desk, part of my wellness plan. But it'll be 4:30, and I'm like, oh, you know, I'm pretty much done for the day. But then at 5:30 or 6, I'm still standing there answering emails.
Right.
Because you're just hardwired and you get into it and you go. So
Yeah.
you have to be purposeful. You have to take intentional steps. And I think any theater teacher can plan for
Right.
wellness just like anybody else.
The work smarter, not necessarily harder kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the fun stuff, and you know, get rid of the stories. Is there something in today's world of theater education that you wish, and there could be a lot that you wish you had when you were in high school or even in middle school?
Well,
LEDs.
no, well, lights at all. No,
Yeah,
I'm going to be
okay.
honest. Every play I was in high school was on a stage at the end of the basketball court in the gym.
Okay.
It was a built-in stage,
Right.
but you couldn't fly anything.
Right.
Any set design had to be big old panels that were built and moved around.
Yeah.
We had one curtain that opened and closed. There were none of the curtains on the side. There were none.
Yeah.
It was just a bare stage,
Right.
and the back wall opened up into the band hall.
Okay.
So you know, that was our dressing area, and we'd
Yeah.
come in back and forth. But no, I wish I would have had access to a real stage and
Right.
real lights and real sound and real music, and you know, because it's just I can't go without saying I had amazing teachers.
Right.
I had Amy Hankins my freshman year, and then she left, and then Janice Fawcett was her name. She showed up as Janice Rome. She got married and she became Janice Fawcett. She was amazing.
Right.
She had actually worked on Broadway from West Plains, Missouri, went to
Okay.
Broadway, then came back to Stratford, Missouri to be a theater teacher.
Wow.
And she was classic. I mean, she was flighty and giddy and laughed
Scarves.
and light, but she knew how to teach us.
Right.
You know, she brought the best out in all of our shows, and I am forever thankful for her because she did shows that I could star in.
Right.
You know, she did because she knew. She saw my ability, and she knew in that small town I could never be the love interest, the
Right.
leading man. So we got to do Our Town, which is still one of my favorite shows,
Yeah,
and I got to be stage manager in Our
Okay.
Town. I still can't believe I memorized that entire script.
Yeah.
But there's certain moments in that show that were amazing.
Yeah.
I got to be Sheridan Whiteside in The Man Who Came to Dinner, which is still another one of my very favorite roles.
Do you remember this, like some of the dialogue? Do you
Very
still-
few bits.
Okay.
Very few bits.
Okay,
But
because I was about to say, is there a name that you've forgotten? Because you have like a Rolodex of names. Because I mean, I remember my high school directors too, and such. But you've listed off like I don't remember people I was in shows with or lit or did.
well, these are
anything like
people that were
They're
influential.
very influential. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks to social media,
Being able to reconnect.
a lot of my friends, I have my friend Donna Johnson now. She was Donna Snodgrass back then. She still points out that she was Maggie to my Sheridan Whiteside, and how she also happened to be the vice president of student council while I was president that same year, and I treated her just like that. So I think she's finally gotten over that bitterness. But
That's
we're good.
funny.
We're friends now.
Yeah, I mean, the more I guess the more you say that one of my longtime friends, Courtney Sauls, who's in Dear White People, like she had a whole episode about her in this show that's kind of changed the way a lot of people look at Netflix shows. But I was Elijah Whitney to her Miss Harcourt in Anything Goes, and so we still talk about that because Elijah Whitney's a drunk. And this was in 8th grade that we played these parts, and so we've talked about that quite a bit. About I didn't play a very good 13-year-old drunk, mostly because I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
But
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just like loosen your knees up a little bit and slur your words, and you'll be just fine. But that's funny. So you do have a large memory of these plays. Is there are you gonna sit down and write? Put all this stuff in something, and I know we've kind of talked about this before about writing, but do you want to get it all somewhere in it? I don't want to call it a memoir because that makes you sound old, but
I am planning to write a book at some point. Most people, after they hear, especially the story of my childhood,
Right.
tell me I need to write a book.
have a theater chapter.
There'll be a theater
Yeah,
chapter
yeah.
because there's just and that could be it could probably be half the book, honestly, because it was just such a big part of my life
Yeah.
that even today, it still is.
Right.
But as you talked about earlier, I still love a good musical, but I've come to love just straight plays.
Yeah.
I was able to see Bryan Cranston in All the Way, which was just remarkable.
Yeah.
I got to see the day it closed on Broadway,
Okay.
and that was just slid in right under the wire.
Yeah. So it's spring break. We'll go our separate ways in a minute, but usually I want to end things with advice or fun little quips. But I think advice from you. So because you are a wealth of knowledge, but I want you to speak on what it is that you think that theater teachers and theater educators, even theater administrators, because there are quite a few. I have one that used to be a theater person. What is it that we can, and we haven't touched on what we're doing today's day and age in 2020, 2021 with how we're changing kind of the format of learning. What is the silver lining right now that theater educators and theater teachers can take from the current situation that we are in with digital media and kind of changing the modalities and all this kind of stuff? And I'll stall by continuing to talk if you. But what is it that we can take right now? Because a lot of people that listen to this are on Facebook a lot with, I've got a tech class, or I've got some class that isn't supposed to be online, or some class that is not designed to be taught the way that they're currently teaching it. What is it that we can take from today's day and age moving forward that will live on maybe for a long time in education?
My immediate answer is I think every person you've just described is a creative.
Mm-hmm.
They're all creative.
Yeah.
And you just happen to be teaching, they just happen to be teaching during a season of transition and transformation.
Yeah.
Every industry has that, right?
Yeah.
algebra teachers are dealing with the same thing.
Yeah.
They don't have the whiteboard they can go up and write on. They've got
Right.
to figure out how to engage those kids. It's a different way of teaching. But I think in the bigger picture of theater, I mean, I think you've done this, to do online shows
Yeah.
and to teach some new skills with some new tools and technology on drawing sets.
Right.
I think it's being able to say, okay, this is how I'm traditionally done something, but now I've got to use my creative ability to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like, but
Yeah.
but teachers and theater professionals have been doing that for years.
Right.
I mean, the things you're doing now in your profession, in school and outside of school, in lighting and sound,
Right.
are not what were done 10 years ago, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
30. And it's continued to change and evolve. So my advice is keep your mind and your heart open
Right.
to accept the fact it's different. It's
Right.
going to be different. Let me use my skills to see how to bring it forward in creative,
Right.
innovative ways.
Okay. I like it. Do you think online shows are theater?
I do.
Okay.
I think
I do
we
too.
I think
was
we
playing
live our
devil's advocate.
No, I do. I think we live our lives. Much of the life we live is theater.
Okay.
I had an experience last week where a investigative reporter tried to confront me
Yeah.
in an unexpected way when I was at an event. And I mean, he did everything you've seen Wayne Dolcefino and some of these
Yeah.
investigative reporters do, with the camera on me and him pinging me with question after
Yeah.
question after question. I get in the car, he knocks on the window,
Yeah.
trying to look like the good guy, just trying to ask me a question. I went home and I told my wife, I said, it was straight up theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every bit of that was filmed for him to cut and edit to show that it looks like I was doing a certain thing,
Right.
when really all I did was walk to my car with him asking me questions that I
Right.
wasn't answering.
Right.
And I said it was theater.
Yeah.
And it just made me think so much of life is theater.
Yeah.
Minor wisdom.